can set
Lovely.
up.
Yep.
Thank you everyone for joining in again. Today we are having a wonderful conversation on a very important topic, which is leadership beyond frameworks. I'm your host today, Coach Shweta Bajaj, and with us we have Neetu. Thank you so much. Pro Impact and Talk with Coach Shweta Bajaj bring such programs so that you learn from experts. Welcome Neetu on the stage. Thank you so much for accepting our request.
Thank you, Shweta. Thank you for having me. I'm really looking forward for our discussion today.
I'm really glad that we are having this discussion. And about Neetu, I want to introduce her. She is ICF coach. She is leadership development expert, executive coach. She's a people growth partner, and she is founder of Eagles Ascent. Thank you so much, Neetu. Like today's topic is quite interesting. Leadership beyond framework. So, according to you, first I want to know about you. I want you to everyone. You can let an audience know more about you. Please introduce yourself.
Sure. Thank you, Shweta. I think you already did mention about me. So, hi, everyone. I am Neetu Gambhir. I'm the founder of Eagles Ascent. Eagles Ascent is a leadership development partner for organizations, startups, and entrepreneurs, and anybody, in fact, who wants to up their leadership game. Um, so, a little bit about me. I've worked with the corporate space for about 2 decades before I decided to move out and find something more fulfilling to do. And coaching it was. I've spent quite a few years upskilling myself, formally in the coaching space, so that I know what I'm offering, and I'm doing it wholeheartedly with all the knowledge that is required. And then there is where Eagles Ascent happened. So I've learned through the journey, through my coaching journey, as to what is it that I want to offer to people out there. And Eagles Ascent came into place, and we've designed some leadership journeys. So I am a ICF PCC. Apart from that, I'm an avid trekker. I love trekking, and I'm very adventurous. Might not look like that from the outside, but I'm pretty adventurous myself. So yeah, that's a little bit about me.
Thank you so much, Neetu. I mean, literally, it's a very, very interesting topic we are going to talk today, and who are adventurous, and this topic is also adventurous. Leadership beyond frameworks. According to you, like what are these frameworks? Because maybe most of people are not aware about what is this leadership framework. Please, let everyone know.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. So good that you asked the question, because a lot of, like you said, and many people will be confused what a framework is, right?
Right.
So, see, when you look at an individual's journey, especially if they're in a corporate space or they're building their own business, there is a growth that happens, and there is a stage where you become a leader. Now, whom do we call a leader? Somebody who's leading a team, an organization, or driving the vision or mission of a company, right? Or their own vision and mission. Now, when you get onto leadership roles, it's not like you're doing the job that you did when you started your career. You progress, you learn new things: how to handle people, how to handle strategy, how to handle feedback, how to handle stakeholders, having your presence as a leader, and all these things. So what has happened over the years, because leadership has existed since centuries in different ways and forms, and a lot of learned people have created certain frameworks. When I say framework, it is a certain way of handling a situation, or a role or designation, to say that, okay, what is the approach that you need to take to move ahead, to do to do what you're supposed to do. So these frameworks over time has become something that a lot of organizations fall back on, especially when new people get promoted to leadership roles, and people are taking on new responsibilities. They are sent for workshops, trainings, or even conversations where there are books written about different leadership frameworks, just to help them understand how to deal with a certain situation when they are into. So that is the framework that I'm referring to when we say leadership frameworks. I'm sure any of our listeners, and we ourselves on our leadership journey must have read a lot of books. You'll already see so many books right behind me. Some of them definitely talk about frameworks as well. So yeah, that's what we refer to frameworks.
Absolutely. I mean, lots of books actually written to make sure that leaders know about these frameworks. Now, what inspired you to look beyond these frameworks? Because it's very important, because lots of people researched, then they put in the book, right? These frameworks.
Knowledge that goes you to creating the frames. Now, it's a very interesting question you ask that, when I 20 years of experience, and then I'm saying, leadership beyond frameworks. Because what I did in the 20 years that I spent was, imbibing those frameworks and growing on, on my path in the corporate. But just to take you back, most part of my corporate journey was in roles where I handled complex programs, and they were large, complex programs across teams, across sometimes even different uh, continents, for that matter.
Hmm.
And what happened is, when I am into rooms where I'm managing these programs with different teams, this gives me a front row to access a lot of patterns that happen in company, because when you're a part of a team, you are a part of that, you know um, uh, the confusion, the kind of situations that are there within the team. But when you sit in a room where you are not a part of the team, but you're driving a program for the team, so this is where I actually got visibility to multiple teams, multiple leadership layers within the team. And this is where I started noticing there was a pattern. uh, Leaders are showing up differently to how they actually were from inside. You talk to them in a room full of people, full of their team members, they are different versus how they show up when they talk to you one on one. And this difference was not because they didn't have frameworks on hand, or they didn't have access to know how to be as a leader in a room, but because uh, they did not have access to their own self in those rooms. They were showing up, they were performing. And interestingly, I noticed this not from a coaching lens, but I always observed this. And there was a time when I turned that lens on to myself, to look at, okay, how am I showing up as a leader in my role? And I realized I was doing exactly the same thing, because the more higher up you go in an organization, the more roles you move up. The truth is, the feedback is not honest, right? It's very layered. It's very, you don't get to see the true picture. So as a leader, you start believing everything that you're doing is working very well. So you forget to look at the patterns. You overlook a lot of things, because it's not been shared with you as honestly as it would have been when you were probably an assistant manager. Somebody would come and tell you, you know what, do these things are not going well for you. So when I reflected that on my own self, I realized that I was also doing the same thing. And then there is where I realized I am doing everything from the outside, because that's what the framework does. It tells you to, everything that you're doing is on the outside. There is no inner work that happens, right? But when you show up as a leader, people feel you. It's not what you speak, it's not what strategy you have made, but it's how people feel you as a leader. And for somebody to feel you as a leader, you have to show up your true self, right? And that's where I felt that frameworks that we see are all working on the outside. There wasn't anything within. And when I asked this question to myself, that who am I from the inside, is where the change actually happened for me.
Yeah, it's like a change from within. When you mention that, when people are not self aware, the first key criteria and frameworks, we can look beyond it, because we are following sometimes frameworks point by point, word by word. And when we look beyond it, it's a different kind of mindset. I love the fact when you mention like a lens, not in the coaching lens, but the reflection lens. It's like an observation you have did. And I really appreciate that. Now, see, currently still people are following those frameworks. Those frameworks are still working. And any framework you want to mention specifically that helped you, still you add on something. You I would love to know your mindset and your perspective, like how you look beyond that kind of framework.
Interesting you ask that, because today I'm talking to you about why frameworks don't work, right? And one of the reasons why I say that is because, like I said, frameworks are everything on the outside. They're nothing from within. So what framework has worked for me? I would say they have been. It's not that I just came up with something and I said, okay, nothing will work for me. But if I have to look inward, if anything allows me to look inward, is where I feel that framework fits for me. And when I look back on my journey, when I learned about coaching, because coaching, especially when you come with the ICF coaching framework, so coaching, ICF gives you a coaching framework. It revolves all around presence, intuition, congruence, and having the ability to reflect and create awareness.
Right.
Now the best thing about this framework was, when I was learning this framework, I was learning from a perspective of using it on my clients. But the beauty of this framework is, it will not work until you implement it on your own self. Right? So every peer coaching session that I was a part of, every self coaching that I did, just to look at, okay, in a situation, what kind of question comes up and what will be the answer, every that every activity that I did led to self awareness. So the one framework that has really worked for me, of course there's more to more than just the ICF framework, but the one framework that has helped me was the ICF framework, that helped me go deep within, because it never asked me anything from the outside. It always made me go within. So yeah, that's something that has worked.
Amazing. I mean, when you reflect, and I love the fact which you mentioned, self coaching. When we are looking inward, when we coach our own self, then only we can coach our clients, and then
True.
only we can help others. Healer, heal thyself. It's like we need to understand our own self.
Correct.
Amazing. Now, when we talk about this perspective, leadership framework, now, beyond the framework you mentioned, as self awareness is important and we need to look inside. Now, what leadership? I would look into the leadership aspect as well. What kind of leadership you think like the ideal leadership, or beyond framework, if we look how it impact leaders.
Um, okay, so beyond frameworks, how does it work? So let's look at it as, um, the way we refer maps. Okay, I'll take you a couple of decades back. Probably you and I didn't use paper maps, but if you look at how people navigated with a paper map
Mm-hmm.
in the past, they would had to first understand the terrain that they're going, understand the route that they are taking, and picture that in your head, and then make decisions that, okay, now I'm going to head out on this route.
Right.
Versus, think of you and me driving today. How many times do we look at the route? We go by the GPS, right? So when you have a paper map, you would go back to understanding the terrain that you're driving on, and then prepare yourself accordingly. Versus with a GPS, you're just waiting for instructions that, okay, it's great. Okay, it works wonderfully well, only until there is a roadblock. A roadblock as simple as, maybe the data was not updated, the satellite didn't catch that there was roadworks there.
Right.
So then what do we do? We are waiting for GPS to then reroute us. We are sitting in the car waiting for the instructions that, okay, you know take another turn, or go here, go there, right? What happens to us there is that, uh, we didn't read the road before we started. We didn't prepare for, okay, what happens if there is a reroute. Versus, think when we had to follow a paper map, you had a preparation. Now that is the difference between, uh, leaders following a framework altogether and relying on self-awareness, because that paper map made people aware of the road. So when you're aware of the road, it and when you get the instructions, it's easier for you to maneuver. Versus, you're just relying on a framework to tell you this step, that step, go out, get feedback, read the feedback, this is what people are telling about you. Then you start just believing, and then there's an inner voice that is working against it. They're saying, no, this is not true. So, and we know most leaders go through that. They receive, because they something else in something. Now why is that? Is because you followed a certain framework and showed up the way you thought will get you all the the good feedback from people, but you were not aware of your own self when you were showing up. So that is what I would say how it works. So relying on frameworks is good as long as you are aware of, will this framework work for me, you know, whatever it's asking of me, am I in that space, to be able to do that, or is there some groundwork required to be done?
Wow, I love the fact the example which you shared, na map example. Like while we have a paper maps and when we have a GPS, it's like someone is telling us to move here and there, and there is one way where we explore our own journey, like adventure you mentioned, like
Yes,
adventure
yes,
trek, and I loved it. I mean, how you explained, it's very important because in the journey sometimes when we are following frameworks we stick to it, very strict disciplined way we are following it, that we miss the inner part, our
correct.
own agility, the adaptability should be there, to
Yes.
reframe it or to modify it according to us, according to our clients. Amazingly. Now, if I want you to share with the audience, any three key parameters which they need to take care while they are reframing their framework or looking beyond the framework. So any key three parameters they should know or think about.
um I would say, even before we go to the three parameters, it's important to understand what is this framework asking of you,
Very
right?
nice.
And are you actually available to do what it is asking of you, right? For example, there are frameworks around creating psychological safety, yeah, where leaders go through sessions, and they're taught, okay, create psychological safety for your team, and so you're doing everything that you think is creating psychological safety for your people. But have you assessed internally, when you speak, what you speak, how you show up? Is there any way that is creating psychological unsafety for your team? It's not about following what an external measure says, that do one, two, three steps. You know, it is, who are you from inside? So instead of looking at three steps, I would just say, look at one, just one question. Who are
Mhm.
you from within? Who are the leader, that you are from inside? And then see what each framework is asking of you. Then you see, where is the gap? Are you there yet, or is there a journey to be taken to reach to a stage where that framework is actually applicable to you?
Very nice. It's very important because it's the first question which is the need of the hour, and you have to check, you have to self-assess that yes, this is the framework which can call me. Like this framework is calling me to implement. Now, you mentioned here that something which, like, if you are building psychological safety, still, your behavior, your body language, and sometimes there are blind spots. Maybe I want my team to like everything I've did so that the psychological safety is in the company and everything, still myself, my body language, maybe I'm not aware about it. So what about that if I don't know who I am from inside?
Interesting you ask that, because that's exactly what we work in the space of who I am,
Right.
at Eagles Ascend. uh, the who of, and that is what even coaching says, that it's important to get to the who of the client, not what of the client and what of the problem. It's who of the client, because everything is, it comes from inside. It's you, it's you showing up in every form. So to know who I from the inside, you need to have the um, you need to have the belief that you're open to explore the unexplored side of yours. Because as leaders, we are often used to listening great feedback or bad feedback. Either it gives us a pump, or either it makes me feel that, oh, maybe my entire team is against me. So there are a lot of emotions, there are a lot of thoughts, there are a lot of feelings that come up when leaders are given feedback. But if you separate yourself from that feedback as a person to versus a leader, there is where you'll start feeling that, okay, who am I from inside versus how people experience me. So for you to know who are you from inside, you have to first get into a conversation to explore yourself. How many of us actually can talk about ourselves, excluding the tag, excluding the company that you work for, excluding the salary that you draw, excluding all the materialistic things? If I
Mm,
ask you, Shweta, who are you,
yeah.
how would you answer that?
I mean, I can say the different perspective you have put in the picture. Who am I? It's like inner, you can say I look at the pure soul or pure personality, which I am, and my Shweta, like, white. And that's how I look myself, being
Yeah,
pure.
what are your values?
Yeah,
What do you bring to the table? What are your belief systems? What are your triggers? It's not just the positives. What are your triggers? How do you respond under pressure? Have you noticed? How do you react to negative feedback? Have you noticed what triggers you? What is your comfort zone? How many times are you open to go beyond your comfort zone? These are the things that define you. And that's the truth, that many of us never go into that space, right? We always look at measurable aspects of the external world. How
right.
many promotions have I gotten this year? How many companies have I jumped? How many countries have I visited? These are external measures. What are your internal measures to define you? There is where I would say people should start.
Yeah, I mean, value alignment is very important, which you
Yes,
mentioned. Uh, Understanding what are your values and whether you are aligned to that or not. Like unlearning, learning, and relearning, because sometimes we have learned wrong things and we are not open to explore that uncharted territory, which you
yes,
mentioned, the side of ours which we never, because people perceive us in a different way and we
correct.
perceive ourselves in a different way. You mentioned a very important fact, which is feedback, you know, because feedback only can tell us how people are perceiving us, right? Sometimes people don't give proper feedback because I don't know, like I also ask sometimes people, okay, give me feedback. I want to improve myself, and they, okay, I mean, two, three lines. There is a certain phenomena. They should know how to give proper feedback. And giving feedback is when you are giving a gift to other person so that that person improve themselves. So according to you, how to give proper feedback, and as you mentioned, it can help them to understand who they are and apply the frameworks better and know what kind of leader they are.
So your question is, how do you receive feedback as a leader, or how do you give feedback?
Both. I think both are very important.
Okay, I will talk about how do you receive feedback, because I think again, that will address the who of you as a leader. How you give feedback are again methodologies that organizations use. You use the sandwich method, or you use a straightforward method, each to their own, because every leader is different from inside. Somebody could give very direct feedback and still not be taken as a hardcore leader, and still be considered as somebody who's a genuine leader, versus somebody who gives a very soft sandwich feedback but still considered as inauthentic leader, right?
Right.
So I would, to your question, I would prefer talking more about how to receive feedback, because that talks a lot about you as an individual, as a leader, right?
Mhm.
So receiving feedback is, and again, if you look at some of the frameworks that we have, like, one of the frameworks is the Johari window, which we also use in coaching, very widely used in coaching, widely used everywhere, which talks about go get feedback from people, and what do they think about you versus what you think about themselves. I would say just take a couple of steps back and see the context in which this feedback has come to you, right? Because feedback is always given in a certain context and received in a different context, right? I
Hmm.
can probably tell you, Shweta, I spoke to you in the last 10 minutes. This is my feedback. Okay. My context would be different to the context with which you are listening to that feedback, you know. So again, this is something we widely use, coaches widely use in a conversation, is what context is the person speaking to you from. right? So when you just look at written feedback, they're words, they are just words, right? And every word has an impact on a person. If you write on a word, like for me personally, I'm a very empathetic person. I believe I'm a very empathetic person. But if you were a part of my team and you gave me feedback that I'm very ruthless, I am not empathetic, no matter what you say after or before that, I will be stuck to that word non empathetic, right?
Right.
Because that has triggered me somewhere. So, how do you receive feedback? It's not about what you read, go beyond that and try and see. I'm not saying all that. All I'm trying to say is that when feedback is given to you, understand the context in which the feedback is given, and be clear of what context are you receiving this from. you know when the context is clear for you, then it gets easier to bucketize whether this feedback is coming for your growth, or feedback is coming as a genuine complaint, or feedback is coming to pull you down. Because um, the truth is there are all kinds of feedback out there, but the context with which you read and receive a feedback is what changes the way you uh, respond to it. So yeah, that's what I would say.
Very important point you have mentioned, whether the feedback are triggering you or improving you, how you are taking it is very, very important. I see feedback as a pearl, you have a gems and someone is giving, take it and do not attach emotion to it. Like you mentioned before as well, keeping yours and you and feedback separately. That kind of boundary you should
Yeah,
maintain. Now,
true.
when we talk about leaders, how they can balance it, how they can balance frameworks and looking beyond framework, because the balance is very important. They should also know certain frameworks and to follow the system. So, according to you, what they can do?
See, frameworks, I believe, and this is personally my thought, that frameworks works are like torch. You know, what does a torch do? A torch will illuminate what you focus on, right?
Hmm.
And when you are aware, when you have the self awareness,
Right.
you know where to point that torch. So where to use that framework. Just blindly putting that framework in every situation or any situation will not give you the direction that you need. But if you're responding out of awareness, and that's why you will see me, every time using this word awareness, because I believe that is the driving factor for anybody to show up, their true self. So when you use this framework, you know, a torch, but the awareness helps you point that torch at the right place. So, there is where you will be able to balance between using a framework and going by your intuition, or, by your judgment,
Hmm.
because they are both required. We can't just say only use a framework or only use intuition or judgment. Can you integrate them in certain way that, you don't have to pick between this or this? You you automatically know what is supposed to be done, whether it's a framework or it's an intuition that you're using there.
Very important, it's like a light, you take a torch and it can illuminate the pathway of others and help them to see in the right direction. It's like a team development. Great teams are built like this only. Now, and as you mentioned, like a torch, and great leaders are like a torch. They know where to put the light. Now, what qualities you think these great leaders have?
Okay, very interesting question when you talk about qualities, because we all have a different way to define qualities. But uh, I will again talk from an inward perspective, because qualities that are external, validated by other people, are not qualities. They're more like validation. And as a leader, you should not seek validation. It's more about you know the soft skills of you as a leader, not in a conventional sense, but you know the inner condition which show up as your behavior. What are behaviors? Our behaviors are inner conditions, right? The interior of yourself. And you know If you I have to talk about qualities of a leader, I will talk about, probably the first thing that comes to my mind is presence. You know, presence, not like a concept, but presence of being there 100%, whether it's a one-on-one, whether it's a meeting with four people, or whether it's a conference that you're attending. The presence, the ability to be fully in the room. When a leader is genuinely present, people can feel it. Think about any of the meetings that you've been part of. There's some people who are nodding their head like this, and there are some people who are not nodding their head, but you know who is present and who is not present, right? Because that's a sense that you get. So presence cannot be faked. The second quality I would say is honest self knowledge or self awareness, not just as a concept that I know, these are my strengths, these are my weaknesses. No. Do you know your trigger points? Do you know your own patterns? Do you know where you default to your old self under pressure? you know do you know how are you able to catch yourself mid pattern and then quickly change that? That is the kind of self awareness, that a quality that I think a leader should have. So it's presence, it's self awareness, and the third most important is sitting with uncertainty, by not sitting with not knowing. How many times do we see leaders, at the top of everything? You ask them a question, there is an answer. But how many times have you seen leaders taking that pause and saying, okay, let me think about it, or saying, I don't think I'm sure, do you have something to add here? Right? So a leader who has the ability to sit in the unknown, you know, is someone who's exhibiting, or is displaying or living that quality of a leader. And if you look at this, all the three, right? Whether it's the presence, whether it's self-awareness, or whether it's staying in the unknown, all of these are internal qualities. This is nothing from outside. This is not about how your voice should be, how you should stand, your body posture. No, none of those, because those are all external. Internal, your interior state of who you are, is what I believe very strongly that the qualities of a leader should be focused on.
Totally, that's very, very important. When you know yourself, you're self aware, you have your presence. And I love the fact which you mentioned, be in the moment. Staying present is not something like you are executive presence. Like sometimes we do image coaching and we know like we have to look in a certain manner. Still, it's an inward reflection that how we need to be present in the moment, present in the meeting, and be aware what is going on in there. And yeah, that truly make a great leader, because the difference between good to great leader is like how we are making sure that we are self-aware and going inward, and transformation from inward to outward. Amazing. Now see, Neetu, here when we talk about leaders, we talk about organization, and we talk about team development. These three as perspective I'm putting here, that teams are looking forward for great leaders, right? And now in the time of uncertainty, like as you mentioned, like AI is there, or job loss is there, lots of teams are falling apart. Okay, I can say there. What do you want to suggest, like, okay, how a leader can help them? Because sometimes when you are very good leader, you are a great leader, still there is some miscommunication or something, that your leadership is not truly evolved at that time.
Okay. Just trying to understand the question, that when there is ambiguity, when there is noise around, especially say with AI losing jobs and things like that, how should leaders show up? Is
Yeah,
that the
that is the
question?
thing, that is the question.
Okay. So look, I would say first, again, take a couple of steps back before a simple response, that when you're on a flight, what do they say? Before you put the oxygen mask to the person next to you, put your own mask on,
Right.
right? So it's the same logic. There is panic, there is fear, there is everything around us. Leaders are also going through that. Have you addressed your own panic, fear, and discomfort and insecurities first. Because I cannot lead a person and make them feel secure if I'm feeling insecure from inside,
Right.
right? And the person is going to sense that. How many times do we hear people coming out of a meeting room and saying, I don't know what my manager said, looks like he's also lost, right? So it's nothing wrong to be uncertain, you know. Um, Simple things like, okay, you're dealing with uncertainty, your team is dealing with uncertainty, accept it. Accept and say that these are the times we are in, you know, instead of trying to show up as a strong leader who's going to say, I will take you out of this mess, when probably in reality you have no idea what to do next, right? How the next day is going to turn out like. So I would say, you know, it's a very simple thing, very basic thing. Before you handle anybody else's insecurities and worries and the job threats and all of that, look at how does that play for you inside, how do you respond to it internally, and then respond from there. Show up for the people intentionally, authentically, you know, not to show up as you are the go-to person when they are in such problem, when in reality you might not be the go-to person. Unless you are a go-to person, give them that confidence. So as long as you are responding authentically, there is no right or wrong of what you do. That is what I would say.
Amazing. It's like calm sea. You know, you should be calm inside so that whenever there is struggle in the team, you can help them in the right manner. Thank you so much, Ritu.
See, even if there is a struggle
Mm-hmm.
within, accept that there is a struggle within. You don't have to show up on the outside that, oh, I'm a calm leader. It's okay to admit that, yes, there is a storm inside me also. That is when the team relates more to you, right? Rather than, you appearing something else on the outside and, feeling something else on the inside. Unless you're able to balance that without feeling a burnout, you know.
That's very important. Now I have a very exciting question for you, Neetu. I'm looking forward to answer. You know, if I ask you to create a leadership framework, we are talking beyond framework. Still, if I ask you to create a leadership framework, what it will be?
Interesting. And yes, my answer will be very contradictory to what I have been saying, that frameworks don't work all the
Right.
time. But the truth is, I've been working in this space for so long now that I've realized that how a framework truly works. And I've learned that for any framework to work, it has to be inside out and not outside in, right? If the framework is all about outside in, then you're not addressing the true sense of the leader. And this is where, with a lot of focus over the years, we've built this, methodology which is called the core framework. At Eagles Ascent, we follow the core framework. It has 4 stages. I'll walk you through that. It's my opportunity to really walk through that core methodology. So we start with the very first thing, which is clarity.
Very important.
C stands for clarity. Clarity, not about your goals, not your strategy, where you want to be next. No, none of those. Clarity about who you are from inside, about your patterns, about your blind spots, about, the gap between who you intend to show up as and how you actually show up in a room. That gap. It's there for all of us, right? But you need to have, you need to deep dive to get clarity of your own self. And once that clarity comes in, there's a bit of awareness that starts coming in, and that leads to ownership. That is the next step, right? Which is not ownership of anything but your own self. Saying that I understand this is how I respond in situations. I own it up. It's actually liberating to own up your own self, because then you're not putting a show out there. You show up as who you are. And then once you are aware through clarity and ownership, this is like a phase moving from awareness to integration. So now you're aware of who you are from the inside, and you own yourself up. The third phase goes to realignment. What is realignment? Realignment is understanding where the gap is and taking action steps one at a time, you know to be where you want to be, to show up how you want to show up. There are behavioral shifts that happen during realignment. And this is what we do: letting go of your old patterns. How do you let go of your old patterns? Not by reading a book, but by getting clarity of your old pattern, accepting your old pattern, owning it up, and then whenever it shows up in a situation, you make a conscious choice to not show up as your old self, but pick a new pattern to show up. So, from clarity, ownership, realignment, and then the last step of the framework that we have is embodied presence. Now this is where most of the frameworks that I say are outside in, because they only say, okay, this is what you need to do, then you're a good leader. No, how do you do that consistently? How this this step is where most frameworks never reach, because it's all about follow 1 2 3 steps and then you're there. No, embodied presence is how you show up with that clarity, that ownership, and realignment every time. you know and it's a iterative process. It goes on, it's a cycle, it never ends, because you gain clarity of one aspect of who you are, you own it, you realign yourself, and it becomes a part of who you are. It's an embodied presence. So that is a never ending growth journey for you. And that is the framework that we created at Eagles Ascent. And we've designed leadership journeys that address each of these processes, stages, meeting the leaders where they are, not by giving them a standard template, not by telling them do this, and then you will gain clarity. No, it's it's not a one size fits all. It is each person, each leader who walks in walks out with their own takeaway with the same session. And that gives them more clarity, ownership, alignment, and embodied presence for who they are.
Very
Yeah,
interesting. I
so
mean,
that's
these
the
are the
framework.
key elements, and everyone who is listening should implement these key elements, which is clarity, ownership, realignment, and embodied presence, that help them to look beyond frameworks and also understand frameworks and better, clarity, I can say, better light. Yeah. So now, Neetu, what advice, what you want to give to the upcoming leaders, because they are going to be the next generation, maybe Gen Z, or they are upcoming leaders. So what advice you want to give to them?
Look, I think in the first place, I'm nobody to give advice, because if I give advice, there might be people listening to it and think, okay, maybe I should do this, but it will not match with who they are from within, right? So if I never give advice, but I can give my perspective. My perspective to the upcoming leadership generation is one, that I think they are far more smarter than any of us and our previous leadership generations, because we are living in a different
Right.
world. We are and things are rapidly changing by the day. The beauty of this is, I think, a lot of people, young people who are getting into leadership roles, are no longer hiding behind frameworks or hiding behind authority or position. But I think that was something that was thing of the past, where people hold positions and then that gives them
Right.
authority. Today leadership is beyond titles. Today leadership is beyond organizations that you work for, right? You look at young people who are just out of college and they have a startup, right? That's a leadership quality that they've come up with. This, they're sitting with uncertainty. They probably, some people might say, okay, that there's overconfidence in the generation, but at least they are not following the regular path. They're taking the risk. They're risk takers. So the only advice, or my insight, that my perspective that I would give to the new leadership generation is that focus on who you are as a leader, because the what of your leadership can also be done by AI. That is the world we are living in today,
Right.
right? But the who of a leader cannot be replaced by any system. So when you understand who you are from inside, because we are still working with humans, we still have human connects that we make, and leaders who have human connects based on truly how authentic they are and how truly they show up, are the leaders that survive today, and not the ones who are hiding behind designations and frameworks and yeah. That's what I would say.
Absolutely. That is the interesting insight which you have shared with everyone. And this perspective definitely help the upcoming leaders, follow your own path, find your who you are and then understand what kind of leaders you want to become. Thank you so much, Neetu, for coming on this talk with Coach Shweta Bajaj live series, and sharing such valuable insights with all of us. Yes, friends, you can follow Neetu. She's on Instagram and LinkedIn. So, Neetu, you want to share something how someone can reach to you?
Yeah. So, firstly, Ishwara, thank you so much for this opportunity. We spoke about something which I think often gets overlooked,
Right.
because people feel that, okay, I'll just read a book, I'll learn something about it. But you've picked the topic about, how leadership beyond frameworks actually works in today's world. And I'm really excited that, I could share my insights, my thoughts, and if this resonated or if this helps anyone who's listening, it is going to be my privilege to really, have given somebody a food for thought. Um, yes, I would absolutely love for anybody to, reach out to me, talk about their leadership journey, whether you're, starting new or already on your leadership journey and don't really know what's happening, waiting for the next promotion, but you're like, why is the promotion not coming to me? So there are many ways you can connect with me. The easiest, I always say, is LinkedIn, because that's like my virtual home. I'm always on LinkedIn, and I share a lot of personal insights and thoughts almost every day. You can also follow the Eagles Ascent LinkedIn page. There we share a lot of leadership insights, and that could be useful for people and their teams. And I'm happy to connect with anybody. You could DM me on LinkedIn, and you'll definitely hear back from me.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Neetu, for joining us. Thank you, everyone, for watching this show. Please share this with your friends and colleagues. And I hope it will help lot and lot of people. And take care. Till then, we are going to have more such episodes ahead. Thank you, Neetu.
Thanks, Shweta. Take care. Bye bye.
We can wrap up from here.